Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well, it seems like the Ukrainians are really serious about their counteroffensive, and as of now, maybe against the expectations and my expectations, they're really advancing. Now, what's the size or the magnitude of their advance? We don't know yet. They say they advanced so far about 50 miles in some areas, but I was waiting for confirmation from the Russian side, because the other guys can say, yeah, we advanced 3,000 miles. Well, I don't believe you. So let's see. Now I have a confirmation that at least the Russians are trying to evacuate some cities, so from occupied areas. So that would obviously signal that together with a referendum that is stopped for now, they say postponed, these are signs that the threat of Ukrainian forces advancement is real. So let's see. This article comes from Ukrainska Pravda from September 9th, 2022. Occupying authorities announced, quote-unquote, evacuation from Izium and Kupiansk. So this is what obviously what the Ukrainians are reporting, and I am very mindful of that. So the Russian invaders announced the evacuation from the territory of Kharkiv Oblast after Ukrainian armed forces launched a counteroffensive and liberated some of the settlements. Source: Russian-aligned news outlets TASS and RIA Novosti, citing Maxim Gubin, the Russian-appointed head of the Kupiansk district of Kharkiv Oblast. Quote from the collaborator Gubin: "We are trying to concentrate all our efforts on evacuating the local population for at least 3 to 4 days until the situation is stabilized." That comes from those guys, not from the Ukrainians. "We are organizing," this guy continues, Gubin, "we are organizing evacuation cars and buses. People are being taken to the Luhansk People's Republic, to Svatone and to Logachevka, a village in the Valuiki district, Belgorod Oblast, in Russia. People are being placed in temporary accommodation points," end quote. Allegedly, this comes from TASS. This comes from these guys, not from those guys. So the Russians, not from the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians just picked it up and put it here. Now, if the Ukrainians lie, I don't know. This is what they reported. I didn't hear the TASS. So according to TASS, and I'm quoting, evacuation, end quote, is underway from Izium, Kupiansk, and Veliki Burluk in Kharkiv Oblast. RIA Novosti reports that, quote-unquote, women and children from Kharkiv Oblast will be accepted in the sanatoriums of Krasnodar Krai. Russia's news outlets note that, and I'm quoting, the situation in Kupiansk district of Kharkiv Oblast remains difficult, but the Russian military allegedly holds the city. Gubin added that Ukrainian forces are conducting active combat operations in the Shevchenkivsky district. According to him, that is currently the location of the front line. Background: the armed forces of Ukraine launched a counteroffensive on Russian-occupied territories of Ukraine. According to Defense Forces of Ukraine, more than 700 square kilometers have already been reclaimed on the Kharkiv and Pivdeny Bukh fronts. On September 8, President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed the information about the liberation of Balaklia by the armed forces of Ukraine. On September, and it says, and forwarded this question to the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. On 9 September, the Institute of Study of War reported that Ukrainian forces are likely to liberate Kupiansk within the next 72 hours, which will seriously disrupt Russian supply routes in eastern Ukraine. Now, Zelensky said they already liberated about 1,000 square kilometers. Well, we find out if this is the way these guys are claiming, but definitely if the Russians are evacuating areas, that means someone is coming over. So or at least those guys have a possibility of shelling the area, which is, if they have the firepower to do that, that means they got maybe longer range missile systems. I don't know. Either way, they do not evacuate because they're waiting for the second coming of Jesus Christ. That's for sure, right? So must be something there. I take it coming from the Russians that now somehow, when the news fits your narrative, you use it as being a fact. Like here, they use TASS as being truthful, but anytime before they say, oh, TASS, the propaganda machine, blah, 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 blah. But now they tell the truth because it fits what I like to hear. But if they reported that, TASS, then, imagine things being maybe 3 times more complicated or serious than they reported. Oh, we're going to be back in 3-4 days. That means they expect something to be a counteroffensive now from the Russians going and trying to hold the front or at least push this back where they came from. The fact that the Ukrainians are able to do this is remarkable, I would say. I did not expect that to happen, but a lot of things could last, longer or shorter, or it doesn't mean that if you have here a success, doesn't mean that you're going to win the war. And I'm going to give you an example. If you remember when the Battle of the Bulge, is that what it was? If you remember that one, the Allied, the Western countries, when they landed in Normandy, they were coming towards Berlin, but they left the Soviets. That was the convention. The Soviets will be the ones liberating and taking over Berlin. That was the convention. Now, political convention, not military convention, because there were some generals, American generals, that opposed that, and then they had accidents with their jeep. So then, so they came and when the front came from the west after the debarkation, after the landing of Normandy, they came and the Germans tried one more effort. They tried one more in Ardennes. That was the one, the Battle of the Bulge and so on, where it was the counteroffensive of the Germans with everything they had. The last tanks, their tanks, but the problem, the tanks were not fit for that terrain. It was a very wooden terrain forest over there, and the German tanks were not fit for that kind of battle. They were for open field, not for narrow things. And they didn't have they almost pulled it, they almost succeeded in having the counteroffensive and push all these guys back against all odds. They even had Otto Skorzeny, the guy who liberated, we call it, Mussolini from that north in the mountains, this little hotel that we went over there with about 20-some people, and there were like 200 people defending and keeping him captive, Mussolini, and he, without any shooting any bullets, he liberated this guy, took him and brought him to Hitler. So Otto Skorzeny. And then he, after the war, it was a whole story of this guy. Very interesting life this guy lived. Very, very interesting. So anyway, even this guy went over there and got American clothes and tried to fight behind, and they were caught and blah, 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 and shot on the spot, because you can't do that in rules of the war. So anyway, that reminds me of the Ardennes counteroffensive. It was successful at the beginning, and the Americans did not know who's who and what's what, because they were wearing different clothes, and it was a good counteroffensive, but it didn't last because of the weather, and they didn't have the right equipment. So all this frenzy that is right now, yes, the Ukrainians might do that, but you don't know how far they can get because of military personnel, whatever they have over there to advance. So you have to sustain that, and besides, the Americans, the Australians, the Canadians, the whomever was over there on the other side, they were more numerous than the Germans were. So it was, I don't know, 5-1 or something, or at least, because the Germans were focused on the East Front. 90% of the German army was on the East with the Russians, and 10% with these guys. So these guys had full reign. All right, well, thank you very much for being with me again today. I can talk about the Second World War a lot, and you can have a lot of examples that you can use. That's why when these guys have a counteroffensive with 15 tanks, the Ukrainians, I'm thinking, well, okay, what about the Kursk? And is this a war or something? What is this? Is a kindergarten fight? Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.